This is the Patchwork Suite, where a single musical theme is the common thread in a season of variations. The heart of these variations is the theme we're listening to now, a poetic waltz by Enrique Granados. I'm your Patchwork Suite host, Mary Claire Murphy, and throughout the series, I speak with composers who have graciously written a short work expressly for this podcast. I've asked each composer to draw on both the Granados theme and on a textile they find meaningful. With each new voice we hear, and with each musical sampling, we're building a colorful and diverse patchwork of artistic expression. In the summer of 1893, Antonin Dvorak vacationed in the town of Spillville, Iowa. He was drawn there in part by a community of Czech immigrants that called Spillville home, and it was a welcome change in scenery compared to his hectic work schedule at the National Conservatory in New York City. While he enjoyed the time off, he sketched out his quartet in F major, later called the American Quartet, and it was this American Quartet that became the foundation for a group composition project. In 2004, to celebrate the 100-year anniversary of Dvorak's death, Red Cedar Chamber Music invited 16 composers to each write a single variation on the American Quartet theme. The result was about a 26-minute work they called the Spillville Variations. What's intriguing to me about this concept is that it highlights how music is social. It's meant to be heard, meant to be felt, experienced, and shared. We like to listen to music together. We like to perform music together. Why not compose together too? So for this podcast, I've invited composers to write a variation on a historical theme I've selected, and then we'll combine those variations into one unique suite. The theme and variations, as a form, is a tried and true one. It's straightforward, but reliably interesting. You begin usually with a simple, memorable melody. That melodic idea repeats in each variation, but it's changed in some way each time. How it's changed is completely up to the composer. Oftentimes, just for example, a change might mean embellishing the melody or altering rhythms. It could be a surprising instrumentation. Maybe the change is stylistic in nature. There's enormous creative liberty to enjoy here. I really think the theme and variations concept is an ideal form for our group composition because we get to hear unique perspectives on the same idea. And by the end, we'll have pieced together this intricate, patchwork, you could say. Since this is the Patchwork Suite, I've additionally asked composers to let some of their creative decisions be inspired by a textile that's meaningful to them. That could be a quilt, a scarf, an old t-shirt, really any kind of fabric, and any number of elements could influence how these composers write their variation. Elements like colors, patterns, textures, or even the story behind the fabric. We'll get to the behind the scenes on every variation as we go. In the subsequent episodes of this podcast, we'll get to know each composer and their personal flair. We'll also listen to and explore the variation they've contributed to the patchwork. At this point, you've heard a lot about the variations part of the group composition. Time for the great unveiling of our theme. You heard a phrase or two of it at the start of this episode. But if this is our foundation for a collection of variations, let's listen to the whole movement. It's short and sweet, this waltz by Enrique Granados. That was my own recording of the first poetic waltz by Enrique Granados. It belongs to a set of waltzes that Granados composed early on in his career, published in the late 1880s around the time he was 20 years old. That was also about the time Granados moved from Spain to France. He'd grown up near Barcelona and studied piano at the Barcelona Conservatory, but he moved with the hope of gaining admission to the Paris Conservatory. Unfortunately, he was ill at the time of the entrance exam, so those plans didn't pan out. Instead, he took private music lessons there in Paris for a couple years, and then launched into a successful performance career touring around Europe. One of the crowning jewels in his portfolio was a piano suite called Goyescas, based on artwork by Francisco Goya. Granados was awarded the French Legion of Honor, and the Paris Opera requested that he compose an operatic version of Goyescas, a request which he obliged. The Paris premiere of it was canceled, though, due to World War I efforts. It was rescheduled to premiere at the Metropolitan Opera, so Granados and his wife traveled to New York in 1916. After a successful performance there, Granados was unexpectedly invited to perform a recital for Woodrow Wilson. He agreed. The recital went off without a hitch, but it was a delay in his schedule that meant he missed his boat back home. What might sound like a minor inconvenience turned into a tragic twist of fate. His new route home took him on the SS Sussex, which was torpedoed en route by a German submarine. In the chaos, Granados found his way to a lifeboat, but his wife was struggling in the water, so he dove back in to save her. I wish I could tell you that wasn't the end for him. But I can tell you it wasn't the end of his legacy. Enrique Granados significantly influenced future composers like Manuel de Falla, like Pablo Casals, and now, over 100 years later, we can still celebrate his artistry by making it the heart of our first suite of variations. So now, all that's left for me to do is to pass on the torch to our first composer. New episodes of the Patchwork Suite air weekly on Mondays at 10 a.m. here on FM 91, and you can find all past episodes online at wgte.org.